The mountains shook with a sound that was not thunder. It was the rhythmic pounding of bare feet, the shattering of silence by cries that were neither fully joyous nor wholly pained. Women who were mothers and daughters by day now moved as one under the moon, ivy twisted in their hair, their eyes wide with a fire no hearth could contain. They were the Maenads, the raving ones, and the force that drove them was a god who had not been invited to Olympus. He was the ivy-crowned stranger, the liberator whose gift was a madness that could either break chains or break minds. His name was Dionysus. This is not the story of a simple god of wine. This is the story of the most complex, dangerous, and necessary force in the Greek imagination, a divine paradox who reveals the terrifying truth that ecstasy and annihilation are two sides of the same coin. Dionysus enters the world not with a cry, but with a theft. His mother, the mortal princess Semele, lies as ashes, consumed by the unveiled glory of her lover Zeus. From the embers, the king of the gods snatches his unborn son and sews him into his own thigh, a male womb of divine flesh. This is the core of his strangeness. Dionysus is the twice-born god, a being who dies and is resurrected before he even lives. But this famous myth, preserved in Hesiod's Theogony and countless later sources, is only the surface of a far deeper mystery. The earliest records contradict later versions entirely. Archaeological evidence from Minoan Crete, specifically frescoes at the Palace of Knossos, dated to the 16th century BCE, shows ecstatic processions centered on a young male figure with vegetation. This predates Greek literary tradition by nearly a millennium, suggesting a pre-Greek cult of an ecstatic fertility god absorbed into the Olympian framework. The etymology of his name is equally contested. Dionysus resists clear Greek derivation. Some philologists link it to Dios, of Zeus, and Nissos, perhaps related to Nysa, a mythical mountain. Others propose a Thracian or Phrygian origin, connecting him to similar deities like Sabazios. This linguistic ambiguity points to an outsider. He is a god who arrives, as Euripides' play The Bacchae dramatizes, from the exotic East. His cult enters Greece as an import, a foreign infection of ecstasy that the established order both fears and cannot resist. The material evidence predates the literary tradition by centuries. Mycenaean Linear B tablets from Pylos, circa 1200 BCE, contain the word Dionyso, a direct reference to Dionysus, confirming his worship in the Bronze Age. This shatters the later Hellenic narrative of a new god. Hesiod, composing his systematic Theogonian account of the origins and genealogy of the gods around 700 BCE, must awkwardly fit Dionysus into a divine family tree that has no natural place for him. He is the son of a mortal, a disruption in the pure bloodline of the Olympians. His inheritance is madness, not thunder. His domain is not a fixed realm like the sea or underworld, but a state of being, the loss of self in wine, dance, and ritual possession. This fundamental otherness is the key to his power and his peril. To understand Dionysus is to understand what Greek civilization repressed, the chaotic, irrational, embodied self that polite society must deny to function. He is the return of the repressed, made divine. The city of Thebes stands as a monument to resistance. Its young king, Pentheus, embodies rational order, the polis, the law, the masculine control of nature. When a fragrant, long-haired stranger arrives, preaching liberation through ecstatic worship in the wild mountains, Pentheus sees only a corrupting charlatan. He issues a decree: the worship of this Dionysus is forbidden. The text specifies a detail modern readers often overlook. In Euripides' The Bacchae, written in 405 BCE and our most complete source for this narrative, Dionysus does not initially reveal his divinity. He appears as a mortal priest, beautiful and serene, allowing Pentheus to make the fatal error of believing he can control what he does not comprehend. What happened next would define his role for millennia. Dionysus, with a calm smile, allows himself to be imprisoned. The chains fall away. The palace itself begins to tremble. Flames dance on the tomb of Semele, Dionysus's mother. Pentheus, driven by a voyeuristic fury he cannot name, is systematically unhinged by the god. In the chilling scene of psychological manipulation, Dionysus convinces the king to dress in women's garments, a Maenads fawn skin and Thyrsusto spy on the revels. The rational man becomes a grotesque parody of the ecstasy he sought to police. This scene reveals the paradox at the heart of his nature. Dionysus does not merely punish, he transforms his enemies into the very thing they despise, then destroys them with it. The climax is one of the most horrific in Greek tragedy. Pentheus, perched high in a pine tree to watch the secret rites, is spotted by the Maenads. Their leader, his own mother Agave, is in a state of ritual mania thespian enthusiasm where the worshipper becomes one with the god. She does not see her son, she sees a mountain lion, a beast to be torn apart for the god. The women uproot the tree, they descend. The screams are not recorded in the text, the chorus reports them. Agave returns to Thebes in triumph, carrying her son's severed head on her thyrsus, believing it a prize from the hunt. The consequences of this moment echo through every later tradition. The narrative served theological purposes modern readers miss. It was not merely a warning against impiety, it was a demonstration that the Dionysian force, the raw life force of nature and psyche, cannot be walled out by civilization. To deny it is not to defeat it, but to guarantee it will return as your personal nightmare. The god of liberation is also the god of horrible, intimate destruction. This intersection of origins and terrifying narrative power forms the core of the Dionysian mystery. If you're drawn to mythologies that expose the fragile walls between order and chaos, subscribe for more journeys into the gods who refuse to be tamed. A central question remains: was the violent frenzy in the Bacchae a critique of the god's cult, or was it a genuine, if terrifying, depiction of his authentic power? The archaeological record of actual Maenads practice, sparse but evocative, suggests the truth was far more complex than either simple celebration or condemnation. Not all encounters with Dionysus end in tragedy. Another story, preserved in the Homeric hymn to Dionysus, 7th to 6th century BCE, and on countless black figure vases, reveals his more benevolent yet equally awe-inspiring aspect. A Tyrrhenian pirate ship sails across the Aegean. Its crew spots a magnificent youth on the shore, dressed in purple with dark, curling hair. Seeing easy prey, they seize him and drag him aboard, ignoring his gentle warning that he is Dionysus, son of Zeus. They bind him with ropes. The bonds fall away like dust. Only the helmsman recognizes the divine omen and begs his comrades to stop. They mock him. Then the god acts. The episode appears across multiple cultures with significant variations. Dark wine, fragrant and impossible, begins to flow across the deck. A vine of lush ivy snakes up the mast, bursting with flowers and fruit. The pirates, now terrified, leap into the sea to escape. As they hit the water, Dionysus transforms them into dolphins. Their human minds remain, trapped in marine bodies, forever conscious of their folly. The helmsman alone is spared and blessed with fair winds. This myth is not just a moral fable. It encodes ritual knowledge in narrative form. The flowing wine and sprouting vegetation are direct manifestations of his life-giving power. The transformation into dolphins is significant. Dolphins were seen as psychopomps, guides of souls linking Dionysus to themes of passage and metamorphosis beyond death. This connects him to his mysterious Eleusinian role alongside Demeter and Persephone, where he was worshipped as Iacchus, a god of the afterlife and blessed passage. Here, the god of ecstasy shows his other face, the god of peaceful, if forced, transformation. His familial ties among the Olympians were equally complex. Through his father Zeus, he was half-brother to deities like Athena and Apollo, beings of reason, craft and prophecy. The tension could not be sharper. Yet he also formed profound bonds. His most famous marriage was to Ariadne, the Cretan princess abandoned by Theseus on Naxos. According to the poet Hesiod and depicted on the Franois vase, c. 570 BCE, Dionysus found her sleeping, fell in love, and made her his immortal wife, crowning her with the celestial constellation Corona Borealis. This act positions him not just as a destroyer of order, but as a restorer of justice and a bestower of honor to the forsaken. His relationship with the crippled smith god, Hephaestus, is equally telling. In one myth, Hera casts Hephaestus from Olympus. Dionysus gets him drunk, places him on a mule, and leads him back, using his power of intoxication as a social lubricant to heal divine rifts. Even among gods, he is the necessary solvent for rigid hierarchies. Beyond the terrifying myths, how was Dionysus actually worshipped? Archaeological sites reveal practices literary sources never mention. The evidence points not to a single cult, but to a multifaceted phenomenon with both public, civic dimensions and secret, initiatory ones. In the public sphere, he was central to two of Athens' greatest institutions, the theatre and the Anthesteria festival. The city Dionysia, a massive spring festival, began with a procession carrying his ancient wooden statue from outside the city walls to the theatre. This act of bringing the wild god into the heart of the polis was a controlled, ritualized acknowledgement of his power. The tragedies and comedies performed were not mere entertainment. They were competitive offerings to the god, exploring the very themes of hubris, fate, and madness he embodied. Votive offerings show continuity across centuries of political upheaval. At his sanctuary in Athens, thousands of small terracotta masks and miniature phalloi have been found, symbols of transformation and fertility. The Anthesteria, the festival of flowers, was more intimate and chthonic, relating to the underworld and the realm of the dead. Held in late winter, it celebrated the opening of the new wine. On the second day, Choes, it was believed the souls of the dead walked the city. Households performed rituals of hospitality for these ghosts, then expelled them, shouting, "Out the door, spirits! The Anthesteria is over." Dionysus here was lord of the dead, a psychopomp guiding these liminal souls. This connected him directly to his Orphic and Eleusinian mysteries, where he was central to doctrines of reincarnation and salvation. The most secretive worship belonged to the Maenads. Contrary to the chaotic violence of myth, historical evidence suggests organized, women-only retreats, thiasoi, to the mountains. A 4th century BCE inscription from Miletus regulates such a group, specifying a priestess and rules for membership. They would wear fawn skins, carry the thyrsus, a fennel stalk tipped with ivy, and engage in ecstatic dancing, or abasia, to achieve enthusiasmos, literally, having a god within. The goal was liberation from social constraints and mystical union with the divine. Iconography evolves dramatically between the archaic and Hellenistic periods. Early vase paintings show chaotic, sometimes violent scenes. Later, in Hellenistic sculpture, Maenads appear in graceful, swirling motion, a aestheticization of divine frenzy. This shift reflects how Greek culture continually negotiated its relationship with the uncontrollable force Dionysus represented, trying to beautify what it could not eliminate. The public cult was only the visible tip of the vine. Beneath it thrived esoteric traditions that preserved what orthodox sources merely hinted at. The most significant were the Orphic Mysteries. Mystical traditions preserved what orthodox sources condemned. Orphism, a reformist religious movement dating to the 6th century BCE, centered on a radically different Dionysian myth. Here, Dionysus is the child of Zeus and Persephone, named Zagreus, destined to be the heir of all creation. The Titans, spurred by a jealous Hera, dismember and devour the child. Athena saves his heart, from which Zeus recreates Dionysus. Humanity is then born from the ashes of the Titans, struck by Zeus's lightning. This created a dualistic anthropology. Our bodies are titanic, sinful, but our souls contain a divine Dionysian spark. The goal of Orphic initiation was to purify this spark through ritual and asceticism to escape the cycle of reincarnation. Magical papyri contain invocations structured identically to ancient hymns. Gold tablets buried with initiates from Thurii and Crete, dated from the 4th century BCE onward, provide instructions for the soul's journey through the underworld, telling it to declare, "I am a child of earth and starry heaven, but my race is of heaven alone." This directly references the Orphic Dionysus. Philosophers grappled with him obsessively. Heraclitus, in the 5th century BCE, famously called him Hades, identifying the god of life force with the god of death, seeing the same transformative process in fermentation and decay. Plato, while suspicious of irrational frenzy, acknowledged in The Laws that Dionysian ecstasy could be a divinely given relief for human suffering. The Stoics later allegorized him as the transformative power of the cosmic logos, moving through matter. Nietzsche, in the 19th century, would resurrect this dichotomy in The Birth of Tragedy, positing the Dionysian as the chaotic, primal artistic impulse balanced against the Apollonian order of form. His documented influence contradicts her supposed marginal status. The tradition fragmented during the rise of Christianity, but never died. Folk practices preserved ritual details, learned authors omitted. Elements of Dionysian procession and seasonal renewal were absorbed into carnival and other European folk traditions. His image was reinterpreted by Renaissance artists like Michelangelo, who saw in his androgynous beauty a symbol of sublime creativity. The pattern continues in forms scholars are actively documenting now, from psychological theories of the unconscious to modern pagan revivals that see him as a patron of queer identity and ecological consciousness. This persistent reinvention is his greatest testament, a god who is always other, always arriving, always ready to shatter whatever vessel tries to contain him. Dionysus never earned his place on Olympus through conventional means. He took it. His return, as dramatized in the Bacchae, is not a reconciliation, but a conquest by the force no civilization can ultimately deny. His legacy is therefore not one of simple worship, but of perpetual challenge. Modern scholarship has systematically overturned earlier consensus that saw him as a latecomer, or merely a god of wine. We now see him as foundational to the Greek understanding of the self, the community, and the natural world. The archetype recurs in literature spanning continents and millennia. From the possessed dancers in Flaubert's Salammbô to the wild celebrations in Garca Marquez's Macondo, the Dionysian spirit, the collective, ecstatic surrender to life force, manifests wherever literature probes the limits of rational control. In psychology, Carl Jung identified him as a dominant archetype of the collective unconscious, representing the creative and destructive power of unregulated instinct, the spirit of the deifying of the vine. This psychological reading underscores his ancient function. He is the personification of everything the conscious ego must repress to maintain its identity. To integrate the Dionysian, in Jungian terms, is not to become mad, but to become whole, acknowledging the dark, fertile chaos within. The influence extends into domains historians rarely examine. Modern ecological movements sometimes invoke a Dionysian sensibility against a purely Apollonian, exploitative relationship with nature, seeing him as a patron of interconnected, untamed life. His most poignant modern resonance may be in the realm of identity and liberation. As a god who crosses boundaries, male yet effeminate, divine yet born of mortal ash, Greek yet foreign, liberator yet destroyer, he has become an icon for queer theory and marginalized identities. He represents the power that comes from embracing one's otherness, even when that otherness is terrifying to the mainstream. The final truth of Dionysus is this: he is the uninvited guest at the banquet of civilization, who, once admitted, proves to be the life of the party and the bringer of the storm. He reminds us that the health of any individual or society depends not on perfect order, but on the periodic, ritualized dissolution of that order. To exclude him is to guarantee his return as a monster. To welcome him is to dance on the edge of the abyss, knowing that from that very edge springs the most intoxicating wine, the most transformative art, and the most terrifying, necessary truth about what it means to be alive. Dionysus defies a single face because he embodies the fundamental duality of existence itself. He is the vine that gives both the blessing of wine and the curse of madness, the ecstatic dance that becomes a murderous frenzy, the liberator who can only free you by first destroying who you thought you were. From the Bronze Age tablets of Pilus to the psychological theories of the modern era, his presence is a constant reminder that civilization is a fragile construct, a performance that requires its opposite to have meaning. He is the god of the mask, revealing that our truest self may lie not behind it, but in the moment of putting it on and losing ourselves to something greater. He was never meant to be comfortable, only essential. In a world increasingly obsessed with control, security, and defined boundaries, the dark truth of Dionysus is more relevant than ever. To be fully alive is to occasionally risk being undone.